No, this isn't a video where some freak talks about how the problem with video games nowadays is women being in them or whatever. I have actual things I want to talk about. When I say that games aren't made for you anymore, the person I'm talking about isn't playing games the same way you and I play video games. They don't care about the characters, the world around them, much of the story, or even the actual gameplay. What they do care about are the details. I'm talking the tiniest details, like how Ghost of Yotei now lets you cut grass with your sword, which wasn't a thing in Ghost of Tsushima. See, he's just walking through the grass, honestly. It's unplayable, really. Or it's the cooking fish minigame where you use your PS5 controller to dynamically cook a piece of fish, which is cool, I guess, a good tech demo, but isn't really indicative of any sort of leap in quality compared to the game's predecessor. Yet, because these details do exist, it's something that everyone can immediately point to and cite as legitimate reasons this sequel is a step up. And of course, by legitimate reasons, I mean a YouTube short where someone just captions some cool nerd out detail in a game with something like, when the stupid, idiot, lazy developers finally care about realism. God. Ghost of Yotei isn't alone in being a victim of this. Cited by many people as truly one of the greatest games of all time, Red Dead Redemption 2 is something I just haven't played yet. I'm not sure why, just hasn't really happened yet. Kind of like saving the best bite of a sandwich for last. I know Red Dead Redemption 2 will be good, and I've had enough people recommend it to me to know I'll like it, but what I've heard in these recommendations more often than the characters or the story or gameplay is how detailed the world is. The NPC that cooks in your camp has a detailed routine he follows depending on what time it is. Where you shoot someone on their body will give you a different reaction and animation as they die, and I think pretty much everyone has heard about the horse balls at this point. I'm not here to rain on the parade of people who like these details. They're impressive, and I'm sure go a great way at immersing you in the world, but the more that these are propped up as the reasons I should be playing Red Dead Redemption 2, the more I begin to suspect the game is just 3 NVIDIA executives in a trench coat trying to sell me on a new graphics card. I get why these tiny details are focused on by developers. Ever since the early 90s, the gaming industry has been hell-bent on pushing the technology of each generation further and further. It used to be really easy to convince the average gamer that their games were evolving. Why should you buy an N64 and upgrade from Super Mario World to Super Mario 64? This one is 3D, and some are calling it lifelike. The jump to the PS2, even better 3D. Just look how incredible the new Final Fantasy X looks. This is the next generation of gaming, until the actual next generation of gaming came along, and the next, and you get where this is going. Nowadays, marketing teams have to convince the average person who cares about graphics and details that Uncharted 4 is actually outdated now compared to The Last of Us 2. See the eyes animations and the pupils? Seattle? Grass? Anti-aliasing? It's a whole lot easier to explain how the technology to make games has evolved when you point out the incredible combat system, rope physics, the way characters react to getting shot, the amount of grass on screen that can be interacted with by the player. Hell, the amount of work that went into a cutscene where a fully digital character takes their shirt off in-engine without any clipping. And okay, there's a little bit of clipping, and I have to really slow down this footage because this might get me age restricted, but you get it, you get the concept. These are incredible feats of technology, but the only people who care about this more than a hats off to the developers who managed to get the time to nerd out on stuff like this are people who rank how good games are based on their graphics and attention to detail. See, the listing goes The Last of Us 2, and then GTA 5, and then Red Dead Redemption 2, and then GTA 6 trailer 2, because surely all of these details will appear exactly as they are in this trailer in game. No game trailer has ever lied to us ever or shown off details that were not in the game. That new Ghost of Yotei sure is cool, but when I roll in a with them, my clothes don't look wet enough, so did the developers even really try? Are these lazy fucks scamming me? Not like how in Red Dead Redemption 2, where you can walk through the snow and it's super realistic and gets on your clothing and stuff. Last of Us 2 has cool rope physics, but see, Red Dead Redemption 2 already had that, so that's not really a big deal. In Call of Duty Black Ops 6, there's an animation toggle for corner slicing where your character will dynamically lean around corners depending on the speed you're going. Well, in Red Dead Redemption 2, sometimes when NPCs fire a gun, they'll be covered in black powder burn marks like actual real Old West firearms would. In Mafia: The Old Country, you can't swim in the water. Unlike Red Dead Redemption 2 with realistic swimming physics. Alright, this is a pretty pretty extreme example of this. And once again, I have to stress that it's very cool that these details exist, but you're not getting anywhere by going into a game like Assassin's Creed and expecting Red Dead Redemption 2 levels of detail, because that's not what the game set out to do. When I first watched Attack on Titan, I was sold on an incredible setting, a great story with an intriguing mystery, and incredible animation. It's exactly what I expected out of the series, and that was exactly what I got. I'm not going to take those same expectations into campfire cooking in another world with my absurd skill. The story is pretty average and kind of boring. The animation has some spectacular moments, but I think it's fair to say it's not something you'd see in an AMV, and the characters all stick to their same tropes and same jokes with no real growth. I'm watching this because it's happy, lets me turn my brain off, and has good-looking food I've made in real life. Not every single AAA game that comes out needs to be held to the same standard as Red Dead Redemption 2, or The Last of Us 2, or The Ghost of Yotei, or any other game with realistic-looking graphics. It's truly pointless to compare the details in games like these because it solely depends on what the developers set out to do. Sure, God of War Ragnarok could have taken a whole extra year to develop so that you can dynamically cut down every tree in the game, pick them up, and use them as a weapon like that one cutscene from God of War 2018. It'd be cool, I guess, and people would have some fun with it, but that's not the point of the game. If Santa Monica Studios wanted to make that game, they would have. I mean, the developers of Okami learned this lesson when they were in development. Okami started out as a realistic, for the time, game with a focus on graphics and detail. Development during that period was so inconsistent and slow that the designers created a drawing of Amaterasu in an ink painting style for fun, and that's how the entire theming and direction of that game moved forward. Okami went on to release in 2006, 1 month after Oblivion. Should Okami have been as detailed and fleshed out as Oblivion? Do these games need to be held to the same standard? Of course not, but this is the type of argument being brought up when we suddenly have to hold every game that comes out to the standard set by the level of detail in Red Dead Redemption 2. And I agree, I know what you're saying, I'm literally inside your computer. Red Dead Redemption 2 cost $60 and came out in 2018. Ghost of Yotei came out 7 years later and cost $70. Why shouldn't I expect more? Why shouldn't I compare these games? I've already talked about games being too expensive, and also, not everyone is Rockstar. The same type of people who are focused solely on these details are the same types to tell you gaming is slow or even dead right now. You used to see publishers release 10 out of 10 games every month, and now there's like 3 a year, or whatever. I don't think that was ever true, but you know who I'm talking about. They're walking into Subway, asking for jack shit on their sandwich, and getting mad they have to eat a piece of bread product. Unfortunately, that's the consequence for these big details. Taking a look at Rockstar's recent game release schedule, GTA 5 came out in 2013. 5 years later, we got Red Dead Redemption 2. And after 8 whole years, we might be getting GTA 6 in 2026. Maybe. Huge asterisk. If the game is out by the time you're watching this video, I hope it's good and unanimously praised, because even Rockstar isn't immune to being compared to their own games. Arguably the most popular piece of GTA 5 criticism on YouTube, CrowBCat says GTA 4 is an objectively better game because there's more small, tiny details put into the game. Does that not sound silly? Also, like, just to take CrowBCat's video seriously for a second, at what point did you think the cops in GTA 5 were supposed to be reasonable? This isn't an RP server, it's a video game that parodies aspects of American culture to an absurd degree. Like, what do you think is going to happen when you walk up to these guys when their police chase dialogue says shit like this?
Come on, we don't need this retard alive! Shoot the idiot!
These guys are terrorists. To get back on track, comparing these interactions and unimportant details to each other is now what's happening to every single AAA game that comes out and has realistic graphics. A part of me really still believes that no game should have to look any better than Uncharted 4 or Red Dead Redemption 2. Like, yeah, it's cool if they are, but honestly expecting any better is kind of insane, especially with how long games already take to come out. And I'm not saying you can't want games to be better or a little more detailed, but there's reasonable expectations and then there's delusions. For example, I think it's a reasonable expectation that Pokemon, the largest grossing media franchise on planet Earth, makes a video game that's a little nicer to look at and also stops animating cutscenes with full lip syncing for dialogue when they refuse to hire voice actors for these characters. No one is forcing you into making these awkward ass cutscenes, please. Now, I think it's unreasonable to expect a game like Halo Infinite to put time and effort into fruit on fruit stands on a multiplayer map that no one is going to look at because they're busy playing the game. It's also no secret there's a large portion of gamers just kind of being priced out of this next generation, and the push for these details for realism is partly to blame. You have to have a larger focus put into these huge AAA projects, which means there's no time or resources for smaller projects. These single player projects are then such a big liability that publishers instead focus their efforts on games that are practically guaranteed to print money. The multiplayer live service games that pop up because of this then have their cosmetic and customization sections completely gutted in favor of locking everything cool behind a battle pass or just a straight up absurd paywall. Even the greatest multiplayer games that came out this year, the most popular ones being premium purchases instead of free live service games, include cosmetics that can only be considered macro transactions. Battlefield 6 costs $70, and you can buy a Pro Battle Pass for $25 a month. Arc Raiders is $40 and sells cosmetic bundles worth more than half the price of the game itself. We're at the point that, I don't know, maybe publishers should start like downgrading graphics for upcoming games, because it is a real coin toss if we get any sort of optimization on new releases. I don't want to spend $2,500 on a 5090 so 90% of my frames aren't just frame generation smears on Ultra. I'd like to tell a little story from Ryan Payton on the release of Halo 3 in 2007. Working under Hideo Kojima at the time, in the middle of developing Metal Gear Solid 4, when Halo 3 came out, Ryan showed the game to everyone in the studio, especially Hideo Kojima. Kojima told Ryan to shoot a plant at the beginning of the level, and when that plant reacted to being shot, Kojima simply nodded and walked out of the room. I can only imagine that Kojima, experiencing that game through someone else at the time, had to have felt seen. This is the same guy who made sure the developers of Metal Gear Solid 2 included ice cubes that actually melt when you spill them. I bring this up because, according to Gabe Newell, who I think we can all agree has a much better understanding of game design than I do, in response to someone telling him something in a game isn't realistic, he responded with, "Explain why that's interesting. In the real world, I have to write up lists of stuff I have to go to the grocery store to buy, and I have never thought to myself that realism is fun. I go play games to have fun." This sounds great for my video right now, but it's the full quote that explains the nuance of this conversation. According to Gaben, because he plays games to have fun, they, being the designers, had to define what fun actually was according to them. Their definition, for the purpose of designing their games, was the degrees to which the game recognizes and responded to the player's choices and actions. Gaben further elaborates that, if I go up to a wall and shoot it and nothing happens, to me it feels like the wall is ignoring me. I'm getting a narcissistic injury when the world is ignoring me. So it is like, to me, I was trying to convey to the user a sense of, yes, you were making choices, yes, you were progressing, which meant the game had to acknowledge that back to you. If you shoot at a wall, there have to be decals. If you kill a bunch of Marines, the Marines have to run away from you. The best example I can think of to show this would be from Fort Solace, a quick 3 to 4 hour third-person thriller that, according to the Steam page, is meant to be played like a Netflix TV show, where it's split up into 4 distinct chapters. It's a walking simulator with some quick-time events sprinkled in here and there, the focus for the game being on the presentation and story. A game where little details and realism becomes really important. One of the little details in the game is a fully solvable Rubik's Cube, just sat on a desk, with its own control scheme. You could sit here for 15 minutes, 30 minutes, hell, an hour, solving this thing, and when you finally do, nothing. Truly nothing. There's achievements for using a punching bag, shooting at a pool table, hell, drinking a beer. But solving a Rubik's Cube gives you no achievement, no dialogue, jingle, literally not a single acknowledgement that you even took this action. On some part, that's my fault. I'm walking into this story-driven, Netflix-inspired, quick time event type of game trying to get enjoyment out of a fucking Rubik's Cube. But really? The game acknowledges me drinking beer, but not this, which seems to take infinitely more effort and is kind of a slam dunk thing to include as like an achievement. That feeling is the effect these little details have. Cutting the grass, moving foliage, rolling in a river. It's the game acknowledging your existence. Should you expect every single game to have all of these details in them? No. This isn't a lawn care simulator, so if you can't chop down a tree or cut the grass, it's not a big deal. If you roll in a river and your character isn't wet, then that's not the point of the game. You're comparing apples and oranges. These little details are cool, are immersive, but they don't break the experience, seeing as other games didn't have them and did just fine. The developers are probably trying to tell you to, I don't know, play the damn game, experience the story, interact with the gameplay, which is the most important part. Also, to be fair, the cutting the grass thing isn't even new. You could do that in some of the Legend of Zelda games since like 1992, and in Pokemon up until like Generation 3. Okay, bye. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing and click on the end screen to watch another.